It's a national tragedy. Every day we see these disturbing images of violence in our cities, small towns, and even our schools. They all have one thing in common: handguns in the wrong hands. Millions of easily available handguns, and they're being used more and more by drug dealers, gang members, hate groups, and the mentally deranged.
It's frustrating to watch the growing violence around us. It makes me very angry to think about how easy it is for criminals and the violence-prone to get handguns in America. That's why I'm asking you to help us do something about the crisis today. My name is Sarah Brady. In 1980, John Hinckley walked into a pawn shop, purchased a $29 handgun, then shot President Reagan, a Secret Service agent, a policeman, and the President's press secretary, my husband, Jim. That handgun changed our lives forever. If the authorities had been able to check up on John Hinckley, if the law required a waiting period before he got his handgun, our lives might be very different today. We're not the only family touched by this tragedy. During the last 20 years, nearly 500,000 American men, women, and children were killed and millions more injured by handguns in the wrong hands.
Handgun violence is becoming a horrifying way of life on our streets and increasingly in our schools. Over the past 2 years, students in over 27 states have been wounded or killed by other students firing handguns in schools. Drug pushers in and near our schools have turned entire neighborhoods into drug war zones. There are constant reminders in the news that gun violence is on the rise. On April 24, 1990, a quiet shopping mall in Atlanta, Georgia, turned into a scene of horror as a man just released from a mental hospital went on a shooting spree, killing 1 and injuring 4. He used a handgun bought at a pawn shop just the day before. Every day, law enforcement officers put their lives on the line for public safety. Recently in Philadelphia, a police officer gave his life in the fight against crime, shot in cold blood by a criminal armed with a handgun. What you are about to hear is the actual shooting of this police officer as he called 911 for help.
York Street. What? 29 York. 29th and York? What the we have this. Hello? Hello? Yeah, 29 and York?
Today, no American is safe. Not the president, not the police, not your family, not your children in school, from the menace posed by the spread of handguns.
That's why I joined Handgun Control several years ago. Today, I'm the chair of the Citizens Group. For the next few minutes, you'll see what we're doing to keep handguns out of the wrong hands. We'll tell you what we are doing to convince Congress to enact a sensible national gun policy. We'll show you how the National Rifle Association is trying to silence us and bully the Congress. And finally, we'll tell you exactly what you can do to help stop this menace to our safety and our lives.
Good afternoon, Handgun Control.
In 1974, the families of several handgun victims got fed up with the violence and formed Handgun Control Incorporated, a national citizens lobby working to reduce the probability that you and other Americans will suffer similar tragedies. There are now more than 1 million Americans signed up to help us create a safer, less violent America. Our founding chairman is my friend, Pete Shields.
Here's a grim statistic. Last year, 22,000 Americans were killed by handguns used in murders, suicides, and accidents. That's a national disgrace. Here's another way to look at it. In 1985, handguns were used to murder 46 people in Japan, 8 in Great Britain, 18 in Israel, 5 in Australia, 5 in Canada, and 8,092 here in the United States of America, which has the weakest handgun laws of any developed nation in the world and has by far the highest violent crime rate. I helped found Handgun Control because in 1974, my 23-year-old son, Nick, became one of those statistics. Murdered by a stranger with a handgun, he was the final victim of the so-called zebra killings, a series of brutal attacks and murders in San Francisco. Since that time, my wife Jean and I have devoted our lives to fight America's mindless wave of handgun violence through the work of Handgun Control. We at Handgun Control feel it's just plain common sense that America have a national gun policy that truly keeps handguns out of the wrong hands, the hands of criminals, drug addicts, the mentally ill, and young children.
Join the fight to keep handguns out of the wrong hands. You can make a difference. Handgun Control Incorporated is actively lobbying for a mandatory jail sentence for anyone who commits a crime with a handgun, a ban on the manufacture and sale of easily concealed low-quality handguns known as Saturday Night Specials, mandatory safety training for all prospective handgun buyers, creating gun-free zones around all our schools. And a national gun policy must address another urgent issue. January 1989. A deranged man with an AK-47 assault weapon opened fire on a schoolyard full of children in Stockton, California, killing 5 and wounding 30 others. A few months later, another psychotic gunman, armed with an arsenal of assault weapons, went on a rampage in a Louisville, Kentucky printing plant, killing 9 and wounding more than a dozen others. The semi-automatic assault pistol is designed to kill and injure human beings as rapidly as possible. It has become the weapon of choice of drug dealers because of its deadly firepower and concealability. Handgun Control wants a permanent ban on all sales of assault weapons. And most importantly, we need a national cooling-off period for handgun purchases, the cornerstone of an effective national gun policy. It's a 7-day waiting period to check on a buyer's background, to screen out convicted felons, drug addicts, and others prohibited from owning concealable handguns. 7 days to keep people in the heat of anger or contemplating suicide from quickly buying a handgun. 7 days to save the lives of thousands of potential victims. It's a commonplace, everyday scene, and it's ridiculous. In half the states in this country, just about anyone who wants a handgun can fill out a simple form, pay cash, and walk out with a deadly weapon. This is the form a purchaser fills out. Current federal law prohibits selling handguns to felons, minors, drug addicts, fugitives from justice, and the mentally incompetent. While it is against the law to lie on the form, federal law doesn't require anyone to check the answers. Basically, it's like putting the nation's murderers, criminals, and drug pushers on the honor system. Handgun Control is working to strengthen the federal gun control law with the passage of the Brady Bill, named for Sarah and Jim Brady in recognition of their tireless fight against the spread of handguns into the wrong hands. The bill would require a 7-day waiting period for all handgun purchases, so that local law enforcement can run a background check on the gun buyer. States that already have a waiting period and background checks have stopped potential sales to tens of thousands of criminals. But these laws begin and end at state lines. Criminals can easily travel to states with weak laws to make their gun purchases. We need a national policy. Every major law enforcement organization, including the Fraternal Order of Police and the International Association of Chiefs of Police, as well as leading legal, medical, labor, and religious groups, has endorsed the Brady Bill. The first time Congress voted on the Brady Bill, it was defeated because of the National Rifle Association. They claimed a waiting period for a background check would be an inconvenience to gun buyers. The National Rifle Association is one of the most powerful special interests in Washington, committed to blocking passage of any reasonable gun legislation and repealing existing gun laws. They spend millions and millions of dollars in campaign contributions and lobbying to make sure members of Congress vote the way the NRA tells them.
I'm Congressman Edward Feehan, and I'm proud to have introduced in the Congress the Brady Bill, which, as you know, calls for a national waiting period on handgun sales. And I serve on the House Subcommittee on Crime, which is the first hurdle that any gun bill must clear. But despite the hard work of our friends in Congress, many bills never even get out of subcommittee. And why? Because the NRA exerts a tremendous amount of pressure on too many of my colleagues. The NRA is a powerful lobbying machine. And it's not just that they have a multi-million-dollar budget. It's that at the drop of a hat, they can have congressional offices flooded with letters, telegrams, and phone calls from angry constituents. The problem is that the letter writers and phone callers present an inaccurate picture. In fact, the vast majority of Americans do want sensible gun laws. But those of us who work to make our gun laws stronger often have a difficult time persuading our colleagues to stand up and vote against those people who wrote and phoned. You are the silent majority out there. Polls consistently tell us that you support tougher handgun laws. But members of Congress need more than the polls they read about in newspapers and magazines. They need your letters and calls. Let them know how you feel. Sarah and Pete need your help in getting the right message to Capitol Hill. So please take a few minutes anytime you hear about a gun proposal or an incident which demonstrates the need for a new gun law, and send your representative and senators in Washington a letter or give them a call. Let them know how strong you feel about this issue. Letters and phone calls really do make a difference. Congress is currently considering several urgently needed pieces of gun legislation, and you can help us pass these bills and create an effective national gun policy. Don't let a vocal minority drown out the voices of reason.
Join the fight to keep handguns out of the wrong hands. You can make a difference. The National Rifle Association's hardcore Washington leadership is completely out of touch with the American people.
Hello, I'm Phil McGuire. I'm a retired federal agent who spent over 26 years working with state and local law enforcement officers in upholding our nation's gun laws and fighting violent crime. I'm also a gun owner and a lifelong hunter. Since my retirement, I've been able to spend a lot more time on this hobby. I got a deer again this year, and grouse hunting has been just great. Gun owners like us are law-abiding citizens who know the responsibility of owning a firearm. But I'm alarmed at how easy it is for crack dealers, gang members, and the criminally disturbed to get their hands on assault pistols like the MAC-10. We know these assault pistols aren't used for hunting or for sport. They're used to kill or injure folks like you and me and police officers. That's why I just can't understand why the National Rifle Association lobbyists in Washington are defending the sale of assault pistols. Why, NRA?
They have taken one outrageous position after another, spending millions to defeat common sense legislation. After 43 innocent airline passengers were killed by a madman's gunfire, the NRA defended the sale of plastic handguns that can't be seen by airport metal detectors. After 21 people were murdered by another lunatic with a version of a submachine gun, the NRA launched a campaign to defend the sale of machine guns. The nation's police pleaded with Congress to ban Teflon-coated cop-killer bullets. Once again, the NRA was defending the sale of that type of ammunition to anyone who had the money. After the Maryland state legislature outlawed the sale or manufacture of easily concealed Saturday night specials, the NRA spent $6 million in a desperate attempt to repeal the law. But the NRA's tactics of lies and distortions can be beaten. And handgun control is proving it in Congress and across the country. Congress banned plastic handguns, restricted the sale of machine guns, and outlawed cop-killer bullets. In Maryland, the voters overwhelmingly upheld their historic Saturday Night Special law, handing the NRA one of its most humbling defeats ever. Handgun control helped beat them soundly, despite the NRA's $6 million campaign. The NRA is also losing its battle to allow the sale of assault weapons. California and New Jersey passed legislation that completely banned semi-automatic assault weapons despite the NRA's vicious and intimidating tactics.
Today, the NRA is no longer invincible. Our recent success stories here at Handgun Control have given us a renewed hope for the future. With your help, we believe Congress will pass a common-sense national gun policy.
Handgun Control is aggressively lobbying for passage of the Brady Bill. One person who personally knows the importance of the need for this legislation is James Brady. He appeared before Congress and gave powerful testimony.
I'm honored to be here, but it's not the honor that compelled me to appear before you today. It's the anger. Anger at a Congress that just a year ago failed to pass a measure which would reduce the handgun violence by plaguing our nation. I had no choice but to be here today because of too many members of Congress have been gutless on this issue. I think another member said that they've been afraid to take on the National Rifle Association. They have closed their eyes to the tragedies like mine. They ignored the statistics. Well, this statistic has decided to break his silence. Those members of Congress who oppose a simple 7-day waiting period should try being in my wheels just for one day. You can do something not to help me, but to prevent this from happening to others. There are some who oppose a simple 7-day waiting period for handgun purchases because it would inconvenience gun dealers. Well, I guess I'm paying for their convenience, and I'm one of the lucky ones. I survived being shot through the head. Other shooting victims are not as fortunate.
I'm sick and tired of watching the NRA treat Congress like its private political club, and I think you are too. With your help, Handgun Control can mobilize millions of Americans and beat the NRA once and for all.
When you join Handgun Control, you will be helping us get the message out across the country to convince Congress to pass sensible gun laws and give us the national gun policy we need. Not only is Handgun Control aggressively working for new legislation, but we are also the guardian of existing gun laws that the NRA continuously tries to weaken or repeal. And we have the strong support of our nation's law enforcement.
Pistols aren't used for hunting. They're only good for gunning down people and protecting crack peddlers. Why is the National Rifle Association defending the sale of these assault pistols? Why, NRA?
Handgun Control Incorporated is making remarkable progress towards a common-sense national gun policy. Join the fight to keep handguns out of the wrong hands. Your support will help us defeat the NRA and give us the national gun policy we need.
It won't be easy. The NRA has an annual budget of $70 million and an army of 3 million organized supporters. It's time for those of us who want an end to this insanity to build the same kind of political clout as the NRA. They defeated the Brady Bill last time because some in Congress are afraid of them. It's time Congress started thinking about the rest of us. Members of Congress tell us they want to hear from their constituents on important issues, and here is your chance.
The wounds and the memory still hurt today. I've asked the politicians in Washington to keep handguns out of the wrong hands. but they've done nothing. Please help me get their attention. It's simple. Just call this number. Together, we can send a message they can't ignore. Your call can help get it done. Thanks.
1 million strong already. Our goal is to grow until we can stop the NRA. We urgently need your help now. I'd like to ask you to do 2 simple things. First, write to your representatives and senators in Congress. Let them know you want to keep handguns out of the wrong hands. Second, join us by writing a check for whatever you can afford. Your check, along with those of thousands of other members of Handgun Control, will help us fight the NRA. Join us today and become part of Handgun Control. With your help, America can have a national gun policy. This time, we're going to win.